Namaste, everyone, and welcome to the VFA Vedic Dharma Dialogues. I'm Sandy Graham, co-director of VASA and a member of the Vedic Friends Association. It's a pleasure to co-host our VFA Dharma Dialogues. Today's topic is the quest for Vedic solutions, where science and wisdom traditions meet. These are free monthly online gatherings held on the first Thursday of the month, bringing our community into direct conversation with VFA scholars, teachers, and artists living Vedic knowledge in today's world. I'd like to welcome my co-host. Please let me introduce the president of Vedic Friends Association, Benny Tillman Balabhadra Dasa. Benny?
Hare Krishna, everyone. Namaste and welcome. I'm going to begin, excuse my voice, this weather is killing me, but I'll begin with a Sanskrit prayer from the Sri Ishopanishad. It's very, very beautiful. Ishavasham idam sarvam yat kincha jagadyam jagat tena chaktena bhunjita ma griha kasaswid dhanam. Translation: everything animate or inanimate that is within the universe is controlled and owned by the Lord. One should therefore accept only those things necessary for himself, which are set aside as his quota, and one must not accept other things, knowing well to whom they belong. And here's a nice piece of information from my Guru Maharaj, Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, founder of the Hare Krishna movement. He says the Vedic knowledge is infallible because it comes down through the perfect disciplic succession of spiritual masters, beginning with the Lord himself. The Vedic knowledge is received from the transcendental sources, and the first word was spoken by the Lord himself. So our Vedic Friends Association, that is our focus: Vedic knowledge, preservation of Vedic knowledge, promotion of Vedic knowledge for the betterment of mankind. So now we're holding these Dharma Dialogues every first Thursday of the month. And the idea is creating a conscious Vedic 2026. And in order to do that, knowledge has to be spread because it's not going to happen by itself. So we're very thankful for all the scholars who are part of Vedic Friends, who are giving their time, their energy, their wisdom to try and uplift the human consciousness to make a better world for everyone. So that is our goal. So today we have two very special guests. First, we have Subash Kak. He's a Padma Shri awardee in 2019. Subash Kak is an Indian-American computer scientist and historical revisionist whose topics are the history of science, the philosophy of science, ancient astronomy, and the history of mathematics. He's the author of Search of the Cradle of Civilization, The Age of Artificial Intelligence, and many more literatures. We also have Philip Goldberg. He's an author, speaker, and workshop leader, a spiritual counselor, meditation teacher, and ordained interfaith minister, author of Karmic Relief, Harnessing the Laws of Cause and Effect for a Joyful, Meaningful Life. So we look forward to a very lively discussion this evening, filled with information that, as I said, can benefit all of us. So let's begin. First, I'd like to direct the first question to Philip. And the first question is, in a world that is dominated by material science, is there a place for ancient wisdom in today's world?
I was sure you would ask the scientists this question before me. So I look forward to what Subash has to say. My first thought is, if the answer was no, we wouldn't be here talking about this. If there was no place for ancient wisdom in today's world, there'd be no need for us. But uh, access to the ancient wisdom, I think, is one of the great blessings of the scientific age. It's science and the progress that's been made in communication technology and transportation that's given us this incredible access to the wisdom of the ages. And when I was a young man and started my spiritual searching, I was a very rational guy. Um, I didn't want to be sold a religious bill of goods or be told what to believe. I believed in evidence. I believed in reason. And one of the reasons the Vedic legacy, well, all the teachings that came to us from the East, because I started out reading Alan Watts about Zen and all that, and then other sources of Vedic wisdom. Um, there was nothing that seemed incompatible with science or reason. And in my research about the history of how all these teachings came to the West and uh, radically changed the spiritual landscape of America, one of the things that stood out was there was nothing in the teachings, nothing said or done by any of the gurus and swamis and yogacharyas who came to the West and had an impact that put these teachings in conflict with science. But science has its limits. And all those teachers respected science and encouraged the application of scientific principles in investigating the ancient teachings and in studying the effects of ancient practices. And I think that's one of the main reasons the teachings were able to create a foothold in America, because they weren't seen as superstitions, and there was nothing that was in conflict with the spirit of science or the letter of science or known history. That, I think, is a terribly important thing, as evidenced by the fact that a great number of high-class scientists were drawn to Vedic teachings in their personal life and in their intellectual lives in quest for wisdom and insight and revelation that science is not equipped to give them. So, right, going back to Tesla hanging out with Swami Vivekananda in the 1890s and William James doing the same, and Schrodinger and Heisenberg and Oppenheimer and all the current physicists and scientists, there's a great compatibility there and a great complementarity. My life was transformed by these teachings, and so were the lives of millions of other people, because there's no conflict with the age of science and the values of evidence and all the rest. So that's my take on it.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Philip. That was very enlightening. Appreciate it very much. Subhashji, would you like to share on this?
Sure, of course. Thank you. Thank you, Sandy. Thank you, Balabhadra Prabhuji. Thank you, Philip. And Philip, you said it very nicely. The Vedic teachings are consistent with science. And of course, then the question arises, in what sense do they go beyond science? Because that would be a valid question. Now, but before I come to that, let me look at the specific question that was asked, namely, what is the relevance of the Vedic teachings for our times, which are focused on, material science and all that? And the answer to that comes from the fact that this moment, when we are in this age of AI, which is changing things so rapidly, where Now we have AI chatbots, AI agents who can totally simulate the human mind. You can speak to them, they can joke with you, and we know that they're only programs, but they can completely follow what you are saying and respond appropriately. And that raises the question, if our mind is like an onion, is there something in the middle of the onion as you take layer off it, layer after layer? And I think that's where, apart from all the wonderful things that the Vedic tradition has already done, for example, we know that the deepest physical theory that there is quantum mechanics, that according to its own creator, or one of its two creators, Schrödinger, he claimed was inspired by the Upanishads. But that's a separate story. We don't want to get into that because that's already changed the world, changed the modern times, the last 150 years. But at this point, humanity faces a crisis like none other in our whole history. Why? Two reasons. On the one hand, when it comes to cosmology and science, science can explain only 0.5% of the cosmos. It cannot explain a lot of the stuff that's going on in the cosmos, the acceleration of the expansion, the anomalous movement of the stars. So it says there are 28% of the universe is dark matter, 68% is dark energy. There's no evidence for that altogether. So that's one side of the challenge. That is from science itself. And on the other side, here, you are standing at a moment where these machines, because a program is a machine, can exactly behave like us, talk to us, laugh with us. So the question is, who, what is, who am I, and who is everybody else? Are we only shadows walking on earth? And that's where the Vedas have given such amazing answer. In fact, if somebody were to ask me, how do you explain the Vedas, the heart of the Vedas in one line? The heart of the Vedas is that everything is according to laws, which is why there's no conflict with science, but the observer is transcendent. And the observer, which is the source of consciousness within us, is transcendent. It's not a product of time, space, and matter. And so it's totally consistent, rhythm, as they say in the Vedas, laws, but the observer is transcendent. That, and in Sanskrit you say it para meaning beyond the complex of time, space, and matter. And that is where the heart of the problem that humanity faces right now is, that who is the observer? That is the frontier of psychology. Where is the observer sitting in the brain? The brain is, of course, it's all dark, but where is the observer watching whatever the observer is watching? Where is the observer in physical theory? The observer is always outside of the experiment that the scientist is looking at. Where is the observer in computer science? The brain is a machine. Why doesn't the silicon machine have consciousness? So all of these questions can be answered only by the Vedas. That's really the very heart of it. This is the moment when the world craves an answer, where the world needs an answer. And it's because people are not quite sure what the answers are, because most people don't have access to all this amazing wisdom. That's why wonderful people in their 30s with lovely spouses, beautiful children, why are they overdosing on fentanyl? Because they're deeply unhappy, because they've been told that you are nothing but an animal who must live for sensations alone, because that's not what our true self is. That's what the Vedas say. The Vedas say that there's only one self who connects all of us. We are all one, but reflected through the machinery of our mind, and we'll address that further later on. We think that we are different, and it's that paradox which makes life so interesting.
Thank you very much. That it reminds me of Bhagavad Gita, where it talks about Chaitra and Chaitra Gya. So
Right.
Chaitra meaning this field of activity, the body. And with the Gya, with the Chaitra Gya, we're observing it, but we think we're the ones that are doing it. It's actually being carried out by nature. That's also mentioned in Bhagavad Gita. So thank you very much for that. So let's go to the next question. And this time I will start with the scientists. So, question two, what branch of Vedic knowledge or wisdom are you attracted to, and where do you apply Vedic principles in your daily life?
Well, all of my work is informed by my study of the Vedas. In the 90s, I worked on the texts, the astronomy behind it, the psychology behind it. But most recently, what I worked on is the mystery of the cosmos. And that's where the central idea came to me from the Vedas, where we are told that there are five elements, as everybody knows: earth, water, fire, and air. And the fifth is Akasha. And Akasha has been translated normally as space, but space doesn't have any vitality or energy to it. And that got me thinking, and it's led me into a rabbit hole, which seems to have done a lot of, which has a lot of answers to these questions.
How you doing, hon?
For example, questions related to the nature of the cosmos and also the very organization of the genetic code. In fact, I've written 30, 40 papers on it. You can Google it, on any chatbot. And I have a new book coming out in 2 months called The E-Dimensionality Principle. Basically, what I've shown is that physical cosmos is not three-dimensional. It's a bit less than 3 dimensions. E means 2.718. And it's that deficit which leads to everything, which gives structure to the physical universe that there is. So, in other words, to come back to your question, uh, Vedas have, just by thinking about it and contemplating upon it, it seems to have shown me the way to go both into cosmology and to biology as far as genetics is concerned. And as Kena Upanishad says, he who thinks he knows it not, and he who um, doesn't think about it, he really knows it because he's a part of the unfolding of the universe. So, what this has taught me is that you must listen uh, to this vibration within you, and that vibration will guide you. Or you must look into that light which illuminates your mind, and that light will guide you to the next step. And in that sense, uh, this is really completely integrated with what I do.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Philip, I can read the question one more time if you need.
Yeah, please.
What branch of Vedic knowledge or
Yeah.
wisdom are you attracted to, and where do you apply Vedic principles in your daily life?
Right from the beginning, I was drawn to, I didn't even know the name of it then, but I was drawn to Advaita Vedanta. Um, there's just reading texts, Vedantic texts, just resonated in some mysterious, deep way with me. It all seemed to make sense. So I think by nature, I tend to think too much, and so I'm naturally sort of a jnani, and I was always drawn to Advaita Vedanta. But one of the things I've learned over the years is a lot of those divisions just don't hold up. They're the kind of things that scholars like to do. It's the nature of their work to make distinctions between different forms of Vedanta and between bhaktas and jnanis and karma yogis. Most of the gurus I'm aware of were very practical people, and they used whatever worked and whatever works for each individual. And over the years, even though my primary orientation, I would have to say, is Advaita Vedanta, and in the early days, I had very little instinct toward bhakti, but things change. And and we grow and we develop spiritually, and other aspects of our lives come out. And so I don't like to think of myself as exclusively one thing or another. And within the context of Vedic wisdom, there's room for everything. And in every individual's life, following the path that is in sync with their true nature, that those needs are going to change, their inclinations are going to change. And so I found that in my own life, and I sometimes get impatient with people wanting to make distinctions and put artificial boundaries between these things that may hold up in a textbook, but in real life, uh, it does us a disservice if we take those things too seriously, or too literally. About applying it in my everyday life, it's it's so deeply embedded in who I am after close to 60 years, I guess, 55, 60 years of practice and study, that it's just the nature of how I live. But if I had to think of a few things that come into my life every day, it's the primacy of sadhana, the importance of my practices every day and the discipline of it. Because in the times I've strayed from that over the years, it became perfectly obvious that's the highest priority, and that guides me. And certain principles, the the primacy of coming to life from the inside out, that my consciousness, my state of being at any given moment is uh, going to affect how I see the world, how I see my wife, how I see circumstances, how I see the news. And I have to remind myself of a core principle of everything is an expression of my own consciousness. And I have to come back to that. And if something's not right, it's not just on the outside that I have to address it. I have to address it internally. And if anything guides me, in addition to be faithful to my sadhana every day and my dharma, that was a very big and important teaching early in my spiritual path, to be true to my own dharma, to discern it as best I can and live it as best I can in every aspect of my life. It's not always easy, as everybody here knows, but it's a key principle that in this crazy, ever-changing life in the relative sphere, I always have to come back to and remind myself of.
Thank you. That was really beautiful, especially when you emphasize sadhana, the
Yeah.
importance of sadhana, regular practice. Sandy, would you like to take the next question for our panelists?
Well, I think Philip did a great job on already answering question 3, which is what answers
Oh,
to
yeah.
daily problems have you found in the Vedas, which I really enjoyed your solutions as being so practical, because it's not an airy-fairy practice. It's something that you do every day. Would you like to add anything, Philip?
Well,
The question is, what answers to daily problems have you found in the Vedas?
Yeah, and in a sense, I have addressed it, but there are ethical principles in the Vedas as well. And, in the yoga tradition, the yamas and niyamas. And I've had to study those more than in the past because of my recent book about karma and some of the talks I've been giving. And every tradition has ethical and moral principles, do's and don'ts. And there's, of course, some of them are universal. They show up everywhere. But one of the difference between a lot of the Western approaches to this and to behavior in the world and the Vedic heritage is the Vedic heritage acknowledges depth layers of our being. And so it's not just do this and don't do that. It's be a certain way, cultivate certain qualities, uh, cultivate states of being, states of consciousness, align yourself with divine will or divine intelligence, become one as, in yogic terms. Awaken to the true self and act from that, in which case there's an alignment of one's actions with the needs of the environment and nature. Not that it's perfect, because we all are imperfect, but you improve your odds of doing the right thing in the moment if you do sadhana and you are bringing your awareness to the universal self uh, and getting less ego driven and less driven by human needs and so forth. And to the extent I'm successful at doing that, I can address the issues that confront me as a person. I'm very concerned about the state of the world and life in America these days. And I find myself coming back to the Gita all the time because I think, we're in a time where we're all Arjuna and have to, live from the principles that the Gita lays out. I hope I made sense with that.
Thank you. Subash, what practices, what answers to daily problems have you found in the Vedas? From a personal point of view, not scientific. We're asking you.
Okay, personal point of view, when you look within to ask yourself, who am I? That's when you separate the light that shines within from where you are governed by the whole karmic chain, actions or your conditioning, what you have learned. We're always reacting to things as we are expected to, or as is logical, because we are also scientific systems, um, machines in some sense. So we have certain scripts, some storylines, which we also repeat as we interact with other people. But what is behind those storylines? That is the whole question. Because so long as we are stuck in that storyline, you really have no freedom. You meaning an individual has no freedom. So what one is really looking for at in one's own personal sphere is to find that source of freedom, which is what takes you to creativity, which takes you to something new. Because so long as you're reacting, of course, we are like animals. We are also there's also beauty to that, to those relationships, but you can't be creative because you're still within the box of expectations and your conditioning. So how do you get out of that box? How do you see things afresh in a way they have not been seen before. And all that is very important to me in my personal life because I'm a scientist and people do expect me to, okay, I'm working on the genetic code or in cosmology or whatever else. How do I go from one point to another? And that success that one might have is something where you are only an instrument. That's also something you realize that you see something afresh just because you changed your perspective, because ultimately all this light comes from within. So the biggest challenge that one has is to shift that focus, so to speak. Or, the one research paper which has transformed all of AI, its title was Attention is Everything. And this is what they've discovered. And this is, of course, in the yogic tradition, dhyana. Dhyana means attention. Sometimes you translate that into meditation, but dhyana means attention. So, how to pay attention to the light, which is difficult for somebody in the Western tradition, because in the Western scientific tradition, we are told that we are either body or mind. There's a dichotomy. While in the Vedic or yogic tradition, we are talking of three things: the body, which is the gross, the sthul shari, the gross body, then the subtle body, which is the mind and the intellect, and the third is the causal body, which is Karan Shari, which is where things are driving you without you being aware of it. So, how do we open up that causal body to a certain extent to let more light fall into your mind so that you can do things much more effectively? And that's something that I do in my practice, in my sadhana. That's the whole process of my scientific research, also, or my writing.
Just to ask you here, where do you think that inspiration comes from when you're say in the flow of this cosmic energy? Where does that come from?
Well, there is this famous statement, Aham Brahmasmi, which means I am the Brahman within, or you also call it Shivoham, Aham Shiva, I am the light. Shiva means consciousness. So we are the light, but we take it so much for granted that we are not aware of it. We are always looking outside, which is, of course, very important because the embodied world is a reality. It also, one can view it as a body of God, and we must relate to it as well as we can. But if you are looking outside, then you don't have freedom. So, how do we turn your gaze within? Because that reveals your mind, the separation, the distance between your mind and your lamp of consciousness within. And that somehow an epiphany occurs. I'm taking a word from another tradition, epiphany. A transformation occurs and you are transformed. And that is what rebirth really is. Rebirth is now in this life where you cease being what you were before because you were driven by your own karmic chain, which is fine as it is, but now you're born into a new being, just as a caterpillar becomes a butterfly. Now, this is a phrase also which comes often in the Upanishads. So, how do we transform yourself? And this is what I've found in my own daily life, that this is what one needs to do if one wants not to become stale. Okay, uh, you can also say that every writer has only one story to tell. But if we strive or aspire to tell more than one story, then you must be reborn in your life.
Thank you. All right, Benny, do you want to take the next question?
Yeah, this is the conversation is so interesting. I'm getting lost in all this wisdom so much. And on what you were saying, Subhash, this one Vedic aphorism, I believe it's Tamasimam Jyotigramaha, which means come from the tamas, the darkness, into the light. And that light is transcendental knowledge. It just turns on it creates those aha moments when you realize something in this world. So thank you so much for sharing that. So Subhashi, we'll stick with you on the next question, which is what projects are you working on now? You can mention any books you're writing, podcasts, research projects, or events that you're hosting. So if you'd like to
Uh,
share from that perspective, please.
Most recently, my writings have focused on this whole question of AI agents. Now, there are two aspects to the age of AI. One is that jobs are disappearing, and people, there is wisdom in the people. They know that jobs are disappearing, that so the population has started to dive. And according to the best demographers, in another 250 years, the world population will be 1 over 80th of what it is now. Right now, it's 8 billion. Demographers expect that the population in 2300 will be only 100 million. So the changes are so sweeping that it's so breathtaking. What will happen to the world? What will happen to these cities? What will happen to universities? All that will change. So that's one side to it. The other is, of course, we can create AI minds. In fact, the most recent stuff that I wrote, and it's on Medium, uh, it's called personal minds, which are called PEM. So just as you have chat bots, you can go to Chat GPT or Grok or Claude and many others. So custom designed minds could be created for each one of us, and we could use them in our place, especially when we are talking on the phone. And if we are tired, we don't want to talk on the phone ourselves. We put our mind on, and the other side would never know the difference. We'll still be joking and cracking, making stories, be aware of what's going on. So all of that is something that I'm putting some research together and a kind of a review of where all this is going and what are the challenges and what are the opportunities, both at the personal level and the societal level. And it's a kind of an intersection of Vedas, yoga,
Hmm.
science, psychology, and computers, putting it all together.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Philip, which can share from that perspective again, is what projects are you working on now? And you can mention any books, podcasts, etc.
The other day I was talking to somebody and I said, if I were really living in accord with Vedic teachings, I'd be a forest dweller now. Because I'm at that stage of life, and most people I know are retired, and I've never been busier. It's very strange kind of confluence of things. And I think it started when somebody shamed me into taking seriously my status as an elder, and that I've acquired certain information and knowledge, and I have a duty to transmit it through whatever talent I have. So I've been incredibly busy. I have this new book that you mentioned, Karmic Relief, and that's led to a lot of talks and interviews, and I continue to do my podcast, which is called Spirit Matters. I post an interview every couple of weeks. I have my Substack, which is called Practical Spirituality, where I publish essays and thoughts fairly regularly. I'm working on a novel that I've been meaning to write for 30 years that has a lot of East meets West spirituality embedded in the character and plot. I'm teaching courses online. I'm about to teach a course it's in April for Hindu University of America on the history of how Vedic teachings came to the West and transformed us. I'm teaching a course online about karma. So I've been very, very busy and liking it, but bewildered about why I'm this busy at this stage of my life, and realize it comes back to Dharma. I feel a dharmic compulsion to express certain things, and that I probably should have done 40 years ago. and didn't. But now I'm coming from it to it as an older and wiser person. So presumably, the novel I started writing 30 years ago and have finally taking more seriously will be a better novel than it would have been 30 years ago. And I hope I continue to make some mark and leave, some like what all of you are doing, what you described as the purpose of VFA is kind of how I see my own responsibility as well.
Wow, you just you just hit a hot button with me. It's like because now I'm considered an elder,
Yeah.
and there's a phrase that sticks with me because I do a lot of music, and to
Ah,
Subhash's point, I do some AI music as well. But I heard a phrase some years ago from a blues singer from New Orleans, and she said, "Don't die with the song in you."
oh, great.
That just woke me up. I said, "Oh my God, all this stuff inside of me, I got to get busy." So, thank you for reflecting on that. So, Sandy, you want to take this last question? I know this was important to you, so I'll pass it over to you.
Well, I just wanted to add too to what Philip said. One of the things that's respected in the Vedic culture is the respect for elders.
Yeah.
And I remember Stephen Knapp saying he thought he was retiring until he got his Padma Shri, and now he's busier than ever. But I think so many of our senior scholars here in VFA have a lot to offer. And I don't think we should ever, as they do in the West, say we're aging out. I think we should continue to use our Vedic scholars as long as they wish to be, because they have so much valuable information. So I really appreciate that they have taken the time, and that our listeners will continue to come back every month. um, you can listen to wisdom, or you can make the mistake yourself. That's how I look at it. And Philip, I really appreciate your practicality. I've been watching your newsletters, and I really appreciate it. And Subhash, your scientific acumen is remarkable. You lose me part of the time, but I have to do more reading to catch up with you. All right, so the final question today is, what guru has impacted you the most? Now, Philip, I know you have written a very famous book, but perhaps there are other gurus that you have. Do you want to speak to that question?
Oh, yeah. Actually, the first guru I had and who I spent a lot of time with back from the late 60s into the 70s was Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. I took up his transcendental meditation and after the Beatles made him world famous. And I used to say I didn't do this because of the Beatles. I did it in spite of the Beatles. I was drawn to it. And and became a teacher under him and worked for him and his organization for several years in the 70s, and then uh, realized I'm not the organizational type and had to have my freedom to explore and spread my wings and became more of a freelance, pragmatic mystic, as I think of myself. But he had a huge impact on me back in the early days. It set the foundation for the rest of my speaking. And I've had many upagurus since then. You were alluding to my biography of Yogananda. I never became a
Mhm.
disciple of his or even a student, but his autobiography and his life story had a big impact on me. As all the teachers I had to uh, write about when I wrote American Veda, and I had to write about all the gurus who came here, I started to realize how much of an effect Swami Vivekananda had on me, even though he died in 1902, because the literature that he left behind and the people who were influenced by him had a big effect on me. And so I find value in all the teachers I've ever met or read or learned about. There's something to be learned from every guru.
Thank you. That's for sure. I think the longer we're in this tradition that we realize it more. It's just not one guru. They all carry some wisdom. How about you, Subhash? Have you had a favorite guru or
Well,
one that's had more influence on you?
I was born in Kashmir, which was permeated, growing up was permeated with spirituality. You know, people used to come in, these were gurus. Some of them were, of course, very famous, like Swami Lakshman Ju. You know, there were lots and lots. Kashmir was called a valley of saints. So people would drop into our home, and my father, who had been orphaned, he had dedicated his life uh, to this path as a young man until his own guru said that, look, you've done your sadhana with me. Now I want you to go out and get married and then live life as a householder. But we were part of his story as well because he would tell us about what his experiences were with his guru and so on. So, in some sense, my father was my guru. But after that, I've run into gurus all the time. Swami Ram, for example, in New York, or Gopi Krishna, who belong to the Kashmir Shaivite tradition, or uh, but a lot of even amongst my siblings. So it's sort of different from the average person growing up in the West because there the focus is on the outside for a certain historical reason, while our in the East and Kashmir is sort of deep East, deep India, you know, nestled in the valley behind the mountains with its old ancient tradition. So it was really very deeply a part of that.
Very nice. You're so lucky to be born in Bharat. Well, that almost brings our evening to the end. If you have a question, would you please put it in the chat? We'll do it. And while I'm waiting for your questions, I just wanted to acknowledge that we have several other VFA authors on our call. We have Ram Bhatt, and we have Mark Cohen, and we have Jeffrey Armstrong. So perhaps if any of you can give us 1 minute comment on the subject today, how repeat it for you so that everybody sees it. It says the quest for Vedic solutions where science and wisdom traditions meet, or if you have a question for any of our panelists, you can do it either way, but you've got 1 minute. Who would like to go first? Ram, Mark, Jeffrey? Jeffrey G, you want to go first? No, you're good? Okay. No questions?
I will ask a
Mark,
question.
who do we have there?
Ram
Oh,
Ram.
Ram, please. Please.
Hi, thank you guys for your discussion so far. Subhashji, I want to ask you, in your writing about the AI and agents and things like that, have you, when I was reading the fourth book of the Yoga Sutras, um, Sutra 4.4 through 4.5 about the Nirma Chitta, and it was one of these things about the mind, yogis creating separate minds to fulfill their karma and things like that. Is this one of the sutras that maybe has come up in your own research, or are you familiar with that concept?
Well,
Or do you think that it applies to AI? I mean.
oh, absolutely. Because, you know, and this is quantum mechanics also, or science. When you observe, you create. So normally we do it outside. In fact, you can even stop time if you observe an object which is transforming, and it's called the quantum Zeno effect. It will stop evolving. In fact, recently I even suggested that one could, if one were to do this inwards, change the flow of one's own biological time and perhaps extend one's own lifetime, but lifespan. But yes, how you observe the mind transforms the experience of reality in each one of those locus or spheres. And so it's perfectly logical. And in some sense, ultimately, in Yoga Sutra itself, ultimately, you could imagine that you're like a bird who's stuck to these nettles and you are trying to find your way, but ultimately, you have to get out of this brush and be able to soar into the sky, as a kaivalya, in that state of oneness. And I think that's really what it is. And you can translate this image into psychological states and all that. It's perfectly logical and also poetic and also aesthetic, where all these things come together. That should be true.
Yeah, I mean, so would you say that the advent of AI, like maybe for people who have, like business means or goals, or even if they have other specific needs, right? Like, so AI could help us extinguish karmas to, or maybe to learn things that our soul is seeking. Because I'm not totally familiar with all of your writing, but is your take on the growth of AI, in a spiritual context, is it completely antithetical to our, ancient traditions, or is it a
No, I think
evolving tool?
it is an evolving tool. It's not antithetical at all, but it forces us to go to the very heart of the mystery, which is the observer within us. Because normally what you're doing is whatever you're doing is you say that maybe it's not this layer, maybe it's another layer, maybe it's another layer. So you're only exploring different aspects of your mind. But it's actually forcing you, these AI chatbots and so on, forcing you to really ask, who am I? Is it one of the chatbots created by by my action, by my karma, which is doing what it is doing? Or have I really been able to go to the very heart of my own being? I think it opens up everything. It makes it harder, scarier, but it also has the great potential of uh, total transformation of the individual who's doing the sadhana.
Mhm.
Can I jump in? You made me
Please.
realize something because I have apprehensions about AI. At the same time, I'm in awe of it. Um, but there's another quality that the Vedas uh, bring forth and urge us to cultivate, which is discernment. And I think this AI world is forcing us to be even more discerning than ever because it makes mistakes. And the ease with which we can be confused about what's real and what's virtual and what's human and what's machine generated. I saw people getting caught up in a scam because of an AI generated expert testimony that was totally AI and very convincing. So we're called upon to be discerning.
I do
A
believe they
beautiful
call
point
they
by
call Kali Yuga the age of opinion, and everybody's got an opinion at this point. And is it correct or not correct? We don't even know anymore.
No,
Go ahead,
I would have to
Subash. I
state
didn't
an
mean to interrupt.
opinion just to have an opinion about that.
Exactly.
I just wanted to make one point, of beautiful stuff, Philip, that you said, which is that what this emphasis on viveka or discernment tells you is that it's not only now that people can be deluded by AI, and really there's a
Yeah,
great danger, but if you look back into history, you find that people or civilizations have been deluded for centuries, and people have adopted certain views which now in retrospect appear so, have been so foolish. But so which means that if our ancestors were deluded, so can we. See, this is where we have to come face to face. What the
yeah.
truth is, we can't wait because otherwise AI will take over and we'll all become imprisoned by it. And so I think it's really bringing everything into the open, which is a good thing. Humanity needs this challenge, and each one of us in our personal lives also need this challenge, because it's so easy to let go and let somebody else call the shots. No, you can't do that anymore.
Thank you. Jeffrey, I see you unmuted. Did you have something you wanted to add?
Sadhu Sanghas are always an enriching experience. It's because when we see each other reaching for the gifts that the gurus of Bharat have brought to us at this critical time in history, and we examine ourselves as well as they who are speaking examine themselves, because they can feel that they're being examined and therefore they follow suit. This is Sadhu Sangha, and it's always beneficial, no matter what the apparent conclusions are, that we keep on doing it, that each of you have held the torch, and each of us being present have held it, so that this conversation can continue in this way. I thank you all, honor you all, and this is indeed Sadhu Sangha. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeffrey.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Well, next week or next month is March 4th, and we're going to be featuring a topic on mantra meditation. And I wanted to introduce Mark Cohen because he will be one of the guest panelists. Mark, do you have anything? Let's get to know you a little bit better. Tell us a little bit about you in a minute.
I'm a student of the Veda. I would never call myself a scholar. I think I'll be a student of the Veda for the rest of my life. Even though I've acquired, curse of knowledge that's built up in my brain, and hopefully development of consciousness as well. I think my bio's there, that I've been practicing and teaching transcendental meditation for 50 to 60 years, and got a PhD in Vedic science, and I have a special interest in Kashmir Shaivism. But I did want to make a comment on today. I thought it was brilliant. I really, really enjoyed today's dialogue, I have to say. And that question about the relationship of the value of the Veda in a material world, I really liked what everybody said, what Subhashji said, and that, the Veda is the subjective means of gaining knowledge, and modern science is the objective means of gaining knowledge. And there's only this artificial separation from them because of a lack of direct experience in Veda, what Veda is and what consciousness is. I think the biggest, greatest question of our time, by far, and what AI is going to ultimately, I think, draw a lot of people's attention to, is what is consciousness? What is consciousness? And that eventually modern science will catch up with Vedic science, that this whole universe is nothing but the self-interacting dynamics of consciousness within its own nature. And that the application of that universal value growing in daily life is tremendously practical. It is not just an abstract intellectual idea, but its application is supremely practical and transformational for mankind on every level. And the thing about artificial intelligence is, I think it's going to draw people's attention to that fact. One reason might be just because if AI gets more agentic and gets more brilliant and does take over all the jobs, people are going to have a lot of time on their hands, and they're going to start asking some of the big questions in life, because what is my value? What is my purpose now if it's not, related to my job anymore and my career anymore, which was never really what defines a person. But in our modern Kali age, where people are tired and overshadowed by objects of perception, they have attributed meaning in outer performance and because they've lost the experience of their own universal value. So I think as AI becomes more powerful and takes over people's jobs, people are going to have a lot of real questioning about what is real purpose. So I think it may, in a weird way, draw people to getting quicker to the answer of what is really important in this world and what is really valuable, and how the universe is nothing but an epiphenomena of consciousness, and the practical value of that application in daily life. So I thought today's talk was really super interesting, and I hope that next month, when we talk about the value of transcendence with meditation and mantra being a vehicle for transcendence, and how this can waken up the direct experience, what I would call parosha jnana, direct experience that will help increase bauddha jnana, intellectual understanding, and how intellectual understandings will increase parosha jnana, and together they create total knowledge, and total knowledge means brahmachetana, it means enlightenment. So I look forward to it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark. It's
Thank you.
wonderful.
Hey, Sandy ji, there's a question by Andrea. Do you want to take that question? Actually, there are two questions in the chat box.
You're on mute, Sandy.
There's one
I was
thing I
just
wanted to
I
add
just
to that, and that is, this is the ultimate question, and it's now being asked historically. And all of this, all of the Vedas, took place at a time when different voices were welcomed because they were all profound. Us getting together like this is very profound because we're looking for the most effective voice. I'll end my talk with this. AI is a question. Would you like artificial intelligence? And we who've been given Vedic Vidya, the answer is no, thank you. With that, Jai Shri Krishna, Jai Radhisha.
Jai Shri Krishna.
all right. So everyone has an opinion on AI for sure. Is it good? Is it bad? Is it taking my job? Is it making my brain lazy? Am I giving away everything? Yeah, everything. So who knows? We'll see. It's just not regulated well enough, in my opinion, right at the moment. Would you like to introduce? Should we take some questions, Benny? Was what I was going to ask you. We're going over time. I'll ask the audience.
I think for the sake of time, we probably should close out because we have some meeting right after this as well.
Yes.
But if anyone has a question, they can submit it to our VFA website, and we will definitely get back to you on that.
All right. So just wanted to thank everybody for joining us and thank our speakers. Please register for March 5th, which we will have. The topic is Vedic mantras as a solution to world chaos. And can mantras or sound vibrations really change the world? Would love you to join us for that. We're going to have some interesting opinions on that. There's so many different kinds of meditation,
Yes.
and we'll talk about that. Benny, want to do the closing?
I just again thank everyone for coming, participating, sharing your thoughts and your support and your spirit. We feel your support, so thank you so much. So with that, we'll close out. Jai Shri Krishna, Namaste,
Radhe Shyam.
Haribo, Radhe Shyam. Thank you.